I've tried others in the meantime. I believe I've got like 17 tips. I'm always trying new stuff. But I tried Pedro's new tip, Cymer Diaz tip, and that's what I'm on now. I really like it.
Oh, that's a nice, good one.
Yeah. It's and the Lichtman-Minsker tip is quite nice as well. I've been messing around. I have all this time now, so why not? So I've been trying all these different shapes. But yeah, the Diaz-Cymer is quite nice. I tie it on at 59, and I start my tips at 51. My finished reeds are around, 56, 55, 56.
Oh. Most
of the time I use the Chudnow tubes with the O-rings at the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. They tighten onto the vocal.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a great innovation.
Yeah, I had one time the reed come out in my mouth, and I just thought, that's annoying.
You have that happen one time, and it's like, never again.
Yeah, it's like something. Well, I started putting the tubing on my vocal and just sliding the reed under the tubing. So I do that when I don't use the Chudnow tubes, but... Mm-hmm. I have a company that's working with me right now to develop a Deluna model to staples, but I don't really, it's in process, so.
Oh, well, keep us informed.
Yeah, that sounds very exciting.
Yeah, well, just, I have a lot of time to experiment now, so.
Yeah.
Well, this is the market to, get excited about a new English horn staple. Like, this is the place.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And the last controversial subject I want to bring up, or maybe the first controversial subject, is wire, to use or not to use.
The question. I would love to be able to not use it. I end up adding a wire most of the time. Mm-hmm. There for a while I did it automatically. Like I even put the wire on before I clipped it open. And that's what I did for a while. But then I stopped doing that, and I just started, I'm going to add a wire if it needs it. And, there's so many different opinions about what the wire does. I don't really think it has anything to do with the opening. I hear people talk about, I add a wire if it's too closed, but I don't really think that, because you don't want to put it up high enough to make the opening bigger, because then you're pushing the sides apart.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. I put it, 3 to 5 millimeters above the string, and it really is just for stability and focus in the upper register. I get a read to a point where I'm pretty happy with it, and then I think, it could be a little better, so I'll see what a wire does. And if it doesn't make it better, I'll take it off. There are those times, but very rare.
And what gauge wire do you use?
We were on tour in Korea, in Seoul, and I went to DWK, and they have this wire, and I don't know what gauge it is, but it's all cut into pieces.
Oh,
it's
nice.
It's the coolest thing. I love it.
Whoa!
You don't have to cut it. I think it's probably 28 gauge. I think not too thick.
Well, the next question's kind of a philosophical question. Mm-hmm. If you could go back in time, do you have any read advice you would give to a younger version of yourself? I
do. I think it probably would be to spend more time making reads. As a young player, I think the more reads you make, the better you're going to get at it. Obviously, it sounds simplistic, but I wish I had made more reads. I made reads for Stuart Dunkel when I was in Boston at BU, and I made 100 reads a week for him.
Whew. Oh, okay.
That's kind of a lot. I feel like I'm wowed by the sheer number. 100.
So I swear that really made me a lot better reed maker. And he timed me. He really wanted quickness. It had to be quick, so he would put a timer on and make you do it. And
literally put a timer on you?
Oh, no. Like, when he hired me, he's like, how fast could you do it? And I'm like, I picked up my mandrel. He's like, oh, no mandrel.
Why no mandrel?
He thought it was quicker to not use a mandrel to tie the reed. I couldn't do it. I had to use the mandrel.
Yeah.
You can tie a reed without a mandrel. It's crazy.
Yeah, I can't quite even picture that personally.
I know.
Another jaw-dropping moment. My God.
Try it sometime. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I don't recommend it, but it works for him. And then I made reeds for Covey oboes for a while when I was freelancing in Atlanta. I would tell my younger self to pay attention to the crow and make the reed more according to the crow. Maybe, it's a geometry thing. Eugene Izotov and I always talk about it. It's all about the geometry.
Right.
Yeah, it all has to be in the right place, all the proportions. Mm-hmm. Once that's right, then, assuming that's all in the right place, then by making sure the crow, and not cheating and making the crow seem higher than it actually is.
Right.
Because I spent a lot of years wasting time doing that. Mm-hmm. Helping the crow up, that is a bad thing. Because then you just end up using your face more than you need to.
So you've already answered a little bit about how many reeds you like to have prepared, but just wondering, our next question goes into that. So if you have anything to add, that's great. If not, don't worry about it. But
okay.
So how many English horn reeds do you generally have ready for a big orchestra solo like Ravel Piano Concerto or William Tell?
The most recent large solo I did was Suonatunella.
Beautiful.
And I think we had 4 performances. So, I mean, that's another factor in it. I mean, if you're doing multiple performances,
right,
I tend to want to have more reeds ready because invariably I get in there and play and I'm like, I wish I'd played on that other reed. So for that solo, I think I had 20 reeds ready.
Another jaw-dropping moment.
I mean, I have 20 reeds that I would not be embarrassed to sit down and play on.
Yeah.
And the more I play on them in rehearsal, I feel like if they don't get better after a rehearsal, then I want to go on to another one.
Right, so you can pretty much tell in that first rehearsal, this is a winner, or no, it's just going to go into the box.
Well, like I'll play a phrase on it in the rehearsal, and if I don't feel like I can trust it, then
forget it. No more time wasted.
Either we're going to work on it some more and re-scrape it, or give up on it.
Mm-hmm,
yeah,
That is very sage.
Yeah.
Any tips on switching frequently between oboe and English horn, and what you might do differently to the reeds for stability, or nothing at all?
I spent a lot of time freelancing after I graduated college. I ended up playing a lot of Broadway shows and that kind of thing. And I think that really helped me a lot to win my job, because just the sheer fact of having to go back and forth so frequently and quickly.
Right.
I think it was great for me. I don't really do anything different to my reeds. Like tombow, for instance, I'm going to play my normal reeds for both, even though I'm switching back and forth really quickly. The best advice I have for getting better at that is just doing it a lot. When I was preparing for this audition years ago, I think there were 38 excerpts on the list.
Ooh, that's a big one.
And it was, and no big solo, but it was all excerpts. And they had several where it was changing quickly between the two. So I would make myself just do it back and forth. I think it's super important to play both instruments in one practice session, too. Yeah.
That's really good advice.
Lately, I've been spending a lot of time with the Telemann Fantasies, and I've actually really enjoyed. I got my oboe d'amore out, and I've been playing them on all 3 instruments.
That's a great idea.
That is a good idea. And Russ, any tips on oboe d'amore reeds?
This is the first year I've owned my own. I got a really good old one, and it's a Larray. I don't know. I've always been able to make them pretty quickly. I feel like they're easy to make. They crow a D sharp. I know
that is the first thing we're like, well, it crows D sharp, but it's in tune, so that's got to be okay, right?
Yeah, I tend to. I just think it should crow the right pitch, but it should have a pure sounding crow. Mm-hmm. I think that on all 3 instruments. I feel like they can't have a lot of noise and rattle in the crow, because that all translates directly into the tone. Yeah. I've been making a lot of them actually lately. Oh. And my reeds are being sold now. Double or Nothing reeds, I'm making reeds for them just while we're not working. I think they're also sold through RDG.
That is good to know.
That is very good to know.
I'm selling English horn and oboe d'amore reeds through them.
Oh, well, after this interview, I'm going straight to those.
Yeah, I will definitely say Double or Nothing reeds and RDG to get your oboe d'amore needs. And do you shape your own oboe d'amore cane, or?
I do. I just got a shape. I bought it at Forrest. It says DAS, d'amore, and then S. What does that mean?
I don't know what it means. I just call it the Da shape, and if I'm not mistaken, you can use cane that you've gouged on your oboe gouger with that shape. I think it's specifically designed to be used with cane gouged on an oboe gouger. Do you gouge a moire cane?
No, I just buy it gouged.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But back to the subject of switching between instruments, I just feel like playing a piece like a Telemann Fantasy and playing it on all 3 instruments really gives you a knowledge of what each instrument, the differences between each instrument and what you have to do to play them in tune.
You kind of touched on this too, Russ, but the high register of the English horn could present a challenge in terms of resonance and stability. Mm-hmm. Do you have any tips for creating a stable and singing high register on the English horn?
I do.
Ooh.
No, I love the high register of the English horn. I don't know if you guys saw this thread on the IDRS
I totally
thing.
did.
Did you see that? I was speaking backstage one day with John Adams.
Oh.
And we were talking, and I was complaining to him about that chamber symphony that he wrote. I literally was complaining to him because it's so hard.
It's so hard.
It caused me injury, seriously.
Oh, that's no laughing matter.
I played it a long time ago with the Atlanta Symphony on tour. John DeLoe he called in sick, so I ended up having to play it. That is the wickedest, hardest piece. I love it. It's a great piece, but it's so hard. But I was just like, why did you make that so hard? Anyway, and we got into the subject of the high A flat and the solo and the slow movement, and he's like, oh, I just love the oboe up really high. And then he's like, well, what's your highest note on the English horn? What are you comfortable with? And I said, I play my scales up to a high G. And he's like, oh, okay. He says, well, I usually dumb down my English horn parts. That's how he put it. So after I was greatly offended, I said, well, don't do that. Why do you do that? I mean, we have the same range as the oboe, essentially. I mean, high G, anything above a high G is going to be questionable, but high G is pretty doable. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I know for a fact what won me my job was the Rob Roy overture. So the high register stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I really think the best thing that anybody can do when they're working on the English horn is playing slow scales. Quarter note equals 60 from the tonic, from the lowest note, all the way up to the highest note in the key, back down to the lowest note on the instrument, and then ending on tonic in one breath. Quarter note equals 60. And I did that for months. And then you do the arpeggio and eighth notes at the same tempo. But I did that on oboe and English horn for months before I won this job, and I swear I wouldn't have won it if I hadn't done that.
Did it help you build lung capacity?
Lung capacity, I think it aids you in building endurance for long solos, Ravel piano concerto. What everyone said about my audition was I had the most even registers of anybody that played. And I know that's exactly why, because I was doing those scales. With my tuner on, playing against the drum, it makes you figure out how to make all the notes sound the same. And once you do your scales that often, that high, you become not afraid of the high notes.
Exactly. Eliminating that fear of the upper register is key.
And also along with the high register, the reeds. There for a long time, I wasn't really sure that the reed should crow a C sharp. I thought, well, if it's close or whatever. But lately, I've become more convinced that a C sharp is pretty essential, especially if you're playing up high. And it needs to not be noisy.
Right.
So no tip noise and definitely crowing C, and that definitely helps the high register be more singing.
Well, do you do anything differently if you are building a reed for a low solo, like Three-Cornered Hat or Pines of Rome or something more of that nature?
Mm-hmm. If the audition setting is such a unrealistic thing.
Yes.
In what world do you ever have to play first oboe on Pulcinella and then turn around and play Swanatunella? Never. Once you figured out how to make that reed that'll get through an audition and jump through all those hoops, then you realize, in real life I can make a reed that is suited for the piece and not have to worry about playing Shostakovich 8 on the reed that I'm playing Three-Cornered Hat. Yeah. So if I'm playing Three-Cornered Hat, I don't care about the high register so much. I just care that it has a really generous opening and that it's got lots of low crow. Mm-hmm. I love playing down low too. It's so fun on the English horn.
Oh, I know.
I'll even pull out a wider shape. I've done that before. We have a recording of Ich Benderwelt, the recruit leader, Mahler songs, and I played oboe and more on that, but I also played the beautiful English horn solo on that. I pulled out my Mimi shape for that.
Oh.
Because it's all down in the low register, and I was trying it, and I never could get that shape to work much for high register stuff, but it was really great for that recording. Worked out really well. So I'll try a wider shape if it's down low. Mm-hmm. Consequently, if it's higher, I might try a narrower shape.
Can you talk with us a bit about vocals? What you look for and advice for students looking to purchase a vocal?
Sure. As a student, my parents didn't have a lot of money. I never owned an English horn until I was in my 30s. So I really just wanted to be a principal oboe player. Mm-hmm. And DeLoe said, don't buy an English horn, you'll end up playing it. So he wanted me to be a principal oboe player too. But then I got one. I was getting older, and I thought, well, I've got to get a job. So I bought an English horn, and then the first audition I took, I was runner-up for Houston. So I thought, well,